Tim, can you grab the login information, please, from the website? So at the appropriate time, we can read that to the public.
Will do.
Okay, thanks. Chairman Tate, this meeting is live.
Good evening, all. Welcome to our Monday, February 22nd, 2021 Historic Preservation Commission meeting. I would like to call this meeting to order at 6:39 p.m. Secretary Henderson, can you please read the notice of compliance?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The notice requirements provided for in the Open Public Meetings Act have been satisfied. Notice of this meeting was properly given and published in the North Jersey Herald and News on August 7th, 2020, and filed with the clerk of the City of Paterson on July 31st, 2020, and posted in the Paterson City Hall immediately thereafter.
Thank you, Secretary. Can you please give us the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner DeLees.
Present.
Commissioner Garcia Leon. Absent. Commissioner Ahmed.
Absent.
Commissioner Corbo.
Present.
Commissioner Redmond.
Absent.
Commissioner Rafael.
Present.
Commissioner Simpson.
Absent.
Commissioner Walter.
Present.
Chair Tate.
Present. I just want to add a note. I think I see Maribel on the call. She may not have heard the roll call.
I'm here, present.
Thank you.
I corrected that, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum. May I add that the votes of both alternates are needed tonight?
Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to move down to the agenda number 7, new business, as we have important applications to cover this meeting. Executive Director, could you please provide us a report for, we're going to start with A, 67 Market Street in the Great Falls Historic District. It's a planning review of the proposed mixed-use building. It was a previous improvement to a lot that was demolished in October of 2020, subsequent to August 2020 fire. This will be presented by the architect John Bleeker Jr. of Bleeker Architects. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to provide an introduction to this application. This is a planning review application. I wanted to remind commissioners of that first and anyone who's watching. The purpose of the planning review application is to provide the commission's input to the planning board for a planning application. So the applicants have made a planning application to the planning board, which was referred to HPC for this purpose and for this hearing this evening. We have the design team here and the owners on the line of the project, and this is a way of providing testimony to the planning board in anticipation of the planning board meeting. Following the planning board meeting, they've received their approvals, so returned to HPC for a design review. And as everyone knows, the design review is more intensive with regard to the materials review and so forth. Here, we're looking more at the design of the building overall, commitments to preservation practice, how this new building fits into the general streetscape of the Great Falls Historic District. I'd like to start out by showing you a graphic tax map sheet. It's coming up now. This one takes a little bit time to draw for some reason, so be patient, it's coming. Can everyone see that? Can someone tell me, well, can you see that?
Yes, we can see it, yes.
Great, thank you. Right on screen, you have a text map sheet of the portion of the Great Falls District that has various colors on it. I thought it would be a good opportunity to review with you some of the projects that the Commission has reviewed over the past year, going back to around this time last year in 2020, and that'll give you a good perspective and context of the project area we're looking at tonight. The Newcastle Memorial Park project is where my hand is, this sort of triangular shaped parcel in green. As you know, we did review this, and this project now has been awarded and is just about to get underway with regard to construction. This larger red parcel at the corner of Manhattan and Mill Streets, we knew as the Argus Mill project that involves the rehabilitation of the small Argus Mill and the erection of a larger residential building with parking on site on this this is currently a surface lot. This is another project that we reviewed last year. This is the project up above here, this sort of L-shaped piece of property, this large red parcel. You may remember that the Blue Onyx group did a Paterson sort of beach party at the end of summer, like late in the summer, beginning of fall, to get public awareness of their project. We've been doing just preliminary reviews with them, sort of staff level reviews. They're preparing documents and their financing package, getting ready for a planning board application. So we haven't seen this formally yet, but this is a project that I know we've been discussing and that you're aware of. In the large green section here to the left, this large chunk, we have the ATP site and we have Overlook Park. So here, where my hand is the area of the Quarry Lawn. Quarry Lawn is a project you've been hearing about for a while that is still several months from going out for bidding. We're currently working on finalizing construction documents for the Quarry Lawn project area. And we have also recently installed a perimeter security fence around the ATP site. And we have parcels 1 and 2, where my hand is, on the Bride Avenue. Well, actually, it includes this unshaded parcel here as well. Parcel 1, parcel 2, that is subject of our next presentation for this meeting. This is Overlook Park in the area of the visitor center for the Great Falls. So coming around to the bottom, another red skinny parcel at the bottom of the map is a planning review that we did at our last meeting for a new building on Market Street. This is a very skinny, long building adjacent to school number 2. And then finally, right here where my hand is sort of more toward the middle of the plan is the subject property that we're going to hear about in a couple of minutes. So tonight's presentation and also the smaller skinny property are 2 new buildings in the Great Falls Historic District, and we did discuss in our pre-meeting packet that we have not looked at many new buildings over the years in the Great Falls District, and these are kind of a very unique time because these 2 new buildings have come along at the same time. If you recall, the smaller building from last time was the result of a building collapse, a calamity that compromised this historic building that was structurally unsound and collapsed. And then tonight's subject property was destroyed by fire. as what's indicated in the agenda on the agenda. So we have yet another fire property that we are currently reviewing, which might be getting ready to come to us for planning review, which is on Mill Street. On Mill and Elm, basically, it's kind of off the sheet here, but it was the result of another fire, recent fire, and we understand the owners are probably going to be going through the same process as the Terrys are with this property tonight. So this is a unique time, and wanted to provide some context with regard to the new buildings. In the historic district, the goal of citing and reviewing new buildings is largely to evaluate the previous bulk of the building that existed prior, looking at the proposal to see if it's the same or different. Sometimes they're taller, bigger buildings than what was in place. Sometimes they're not. So that's one point of evaluation we're going to want to talk about tonight. And also finishing. So we want to look at and think about compatibility of the new building with the adjacent streetscape. Basically, the owners are not trying to recreate the previously existing building, since in this case, for example, there's no historic building left to sort of fit it in with, and as a corner lot, it's sort of unique because it's not an infill building, which means it's not a lot in between of two other historic buildings. So this is a little different in that regard, in that it's very prominently situated, and it's rather a large a corner, as you can see by looking at the plan in front of you, the map in front of you, with, in terms of the size of the property that we're dealing with. Now I'd like to move to some photos to give you some context of the building that was burned. This is a post-fire photograph, and as I had mentioned also in the pre-meeting packet, the ownership of these buildings are sort of several historic buildings made sort of to look as one larger building. And the elements involved here are the consistency of the siding, this very long metal awning that was attached and covering all of the storefronts consistently, giving it a consistent look, kind of a blocky mass building. And to the other side or corner, I'm changing the picture now. It takes some time to change sometimes. This is the Passaic Street side of the building. Looking from the opposite side of Passaic Street, the other view is the Chauncey Street side of the building and how it presents itself. You can see the corner business with a beauty salon. I remember this salon has been here many, many years. And the wraparound kind of awning again that creates this consistent blockiness to the building, and the same treatment of the siding, and all of the fenestration having been replaced, to making several historic buildings look together as one blocky mass. So this is sort of the previous condition that existed. You can see the heights of the building vary, and I'm going to go to another view now. It takes a minute to draw. Just looking sort of toward the end, I want to point out that there is an adjacent property. It is a typical late 19th century or early 20th century three-story brick building, again, with a mixed-use building, apartments upstairs, and generally it's been a restaurant for many years on the storefront level. So this remains, and all of this is what was subject to fire and subsequently demolished. Going to the next slide. So here's a representative photo of the demolition process happening as the building was taken away. This is now this building is standing alone. On the other side of this building is a parking area for the adjacent senior citizens housing, and you can see the sort of block and mass of the existing building. And you're going to see that the plan that is being presented is similar in this in this mass. Next slide. Okay, so this is another view from Chauncey Street, showing the same characteristics that I pointed out. The edge of the limit of the property is here. I believe that the taxi building is still standing as a separate property. And I thought there would be one more slide to show you I'm going to keep going here on slides because we have a post-demolition photo that I want to show you. Okay, it's changing. There, this is what I was looking for. So this is post-demolition. We have pretty much a cleared site now. The standalone building and a much lower sort of attachment that's behind this building. It's been sort of temporarily boarded up. And the final slide to show you you can see the cellar holes of the various historic buildings have been removed. Today, this is what the site is like, and the proposed new building will be on this site. This is the exposed party wall of the adjacent buildings I noted to you earlier. Okay, that concludes my presentation. I know that the applicants are here, Mr. Chairman, and are ready to provide their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Executive Director, for your report. At this time, I'd like to call the applicants forward to be sworn in from our lawyer, Mr. Ben David.
Applicants, are you here?
Yes, we are.
Okay, you state your names for record?
John Bleeker?
And anybody else or just John Bleeker?
It would be myself, John Bleeker Jr., and John Bleeker Sr., my father.
Ah, okay, just look confused now. Now there are two John Bleekers. Well, Mr. Bleeker Sr. and Mr. Bleeker Jr., do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Yes, I do.
Glad you agree on that. Let's proceed.
Okay.
Okay, now I'm going to, I'm sorry, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that the architects can then share their screen and go ahead with their presentation. I'm going to stop sharing now.
Okay.
Thank you very much. The floor is now yours for your testimony.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Director. It's John Bleeker Sr. Unfortunately, I'm calling in by phone, so I'm available, to discuss this, but I know my son has access to all the videos and the presentation that we put together and you put together for this, so I'd rather let him spearhead most of this. And then obviously I'll be here to sum up on whatever we need to discuss. Johnny, can you proceed?
yes, sir. Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. The application in front of you, John Franco, thank you very much for your report. It was very detailed and it was very helpful in understanding what we plan on proposing here. We are proposing 3 retail stores and 23 residential units on that corner of Chauncey and Passaic Street. And as we go through, our building is going to occupy the majority of that corner, with the exception of this area in the back here that I'm highlighting, which is going to be an outdoor terrace for the tenants. So the front elevations I'm showing here are what we're proposing. We're going to be proposing a stone veneer on the first floor level, and then we're going to be proposing the vinyl siding on the second through 4th floor. We're trying to stay in uniformity with what was there prior, and we are allowed to, in this zone, to go up to 5 stories, but due to the area and the height of these buildings, our client decided that they wanted to stay within, the context of the site, and we're going to stay here at 4 stories so we don't overpower any other buildings in our close vicinity. I could go through the floor plans with you. On the first floor here, if you guys can see with my mouse, this is the Chianti Street elevation. And we have one main entry point from Chianti Street, and we have one main entry point from Passaic Street. We do have 3 apartments, one bedroom, one 2-bedroom, I'm sorry, 4 apartments. We have one bedroom, one 2-bedroom, a studio, and a second 1-bedroom here. And we have 3 retail components in the front here, averaging about 650 square feet each. And then as we traverse to the second floor, we have a mix of 2 bedrooms, 1 bedrooms, and studios. And we have a common laundry facility here. We have an elevator servicing all floors and the mechanical room. And then we have a typical 3rd and 4th floor of 2s and 1 bedroom. So we have 3 2-bedrooms and 3 1-bedrooms. And then we have a basement plan with the storage and the water metering areas, the electrical rooms, and the gas metering. But I'm going to bring us back to the elevations, because I think that's the most important point of our application here, to make sure, historic is allowing us to do a building of this nature. So again, going back to what I had previously mentioned, I'm zooming in now to the Passaic Street elevation. The pictures that John Franco showed, there was a deviation from this 2-story building to a 1-story building on this elevation, and we are now going to be a uniform 4-story structure, again following the stone veneer on the first floor and having the vinyl siding on the 2nd through 4th floor. And on the Chianti Street elevation, which I'm showing now, again, we have the one main entry point for the residential, and so this would be the main entry point here, where I'm highlighting as the main focal point for the entry to the residence, and the other 3 storefronts are there as well. And we also have a P-Tech unit system here. Let me zoom in a little bit further so you can see that, which would go underneath our windows, and we felt that type of style is nice in character, and since we had the AC units inside the windows before, prior to the fire, we felt that this was a good alternative for us to have, as a heating and cooling operation here for our application. That really concludes the majority of the testimony at this point. Obviously, I'm open to any questions or concerns, and my father's here for more technical questions if need be.
Just to confirm, Mr. Bleeker Jr., is that the conclusion of the presentation?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for your presentation. At this time, I'd like to invite our commissioners to ask the applicant questions about what was just presented. Please raise your hand, and the executive director will reach out to you accordingly. I just want to remind you, this is a planning review for the appropriateness for the district and not a design review, which will come later. Thank you.
This is the director. I wanted to note that when Mr. Bleeker was doing the presentation, I think he was indicating, different elevations and things that they didn't move on my screen. I was just looking at the Passaic Street elevation the whole time. So I don't know if other folks have the same experience, but if there are questions, I just want to remind Mr. Bleeker to try to move the plan to the appropriate place if you're going to illustrate something, because I didn't see it before. Do we have any questions, commissioners?
This is Commissioner Walter. I have a question about the vinyl siding. Is it possible that could be a different material?
This is Chair Tate. If I'm not mistaken, it's hardy board. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's already planned.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry, in his presentation, he said vinyl siding.
Right, so it's from our review, it should be hardy plank, which is something that we accept in the district. Can you confirm that that's hardy plank?
Yes, this John Blicker Senior, the intent is to use hardy plank for the project, yes.
Okay, that answers my question. Anything else I'll do in the design review. There's a few other things I'd like to do in design review.
Executive Director, do you see any other hands on the interface?
No, Mr. Chairman, no one is raising their hand. I would like to ask a question about the Chauncey Street elevation. Can you move to the Chauncey Street elevation?
Is that showing clearly?
It's not working for me. I'm sorry. I still see
Yeah,
the same street.
I'm zoomed in here, Gianfranco. I'm not sure if you can see it or not.
I can confirm that the proposed east elevation of Chauncey Street is showing with the side entrance on Chauncey Street. It's clear on the screen. Can you see it, Gianfranco?
Yeah, no, for some reason I'm not seeing it. Maybe my computer is frozen and I just don't know it, which I think that might be the case. Yeah, it looks like nothing's responding on my screen. So that's the issue I'm having. Okay, I'm gonna have to close my screen and open it up again in order to get back into the meeting. But in the meantime, what I wanted to ask about is the rhythm of the fenestration on the Chauncey Street side. I did have the opportunity to look at the floor plans, and I understand that of course windows are sort of dictated or placed where the rooms are in the building, whether they be bedrooms or living rooms. And a lot of the time when we see a wide gap in between windows on the outside, it's because there's a wall between two rooms that is like in that gap on the inside. But the rhythm here is really kind of not as symmetrical as perhaps it could be, and I wanted to ask if there was an opportunity to perhaps adjust some of the fenestration, either by adding a window or removing a window or what have you, or of shifting them in different directions so we would have more consistency on the outside. Can you answer that question?
Sure, Senior. John Blicker Senior, I'd like to handle this, John, please. Okay, basically, Director, I mean, what we did look at that, and we looked at that in detail. And I think one of the interesting components that we have with regard to this application is the building really wasn't one structure. As we know, historically, it was multiple structures. So, it was a combination of basically three buildings put together. But one building was a little bit higher, had a little bit different fenestration than the other two. So what we did is there's two reasons why that window is missing, as you indicated, and there's a little bit larger of a gap. One is to kind of do an interesting play of what the old history of the site was, which is multiple buildings, but obviously we're combining it into one aesthetic structure. But we did want to, use that architectural reference of, the history of the site. Really was not one exact perfect one structure. It was multiple structures combined together. But now, we kind of thought this was a nice, interesting play on it. There is a fair, symmetry between the two structures that would be closest to the right, and that they line up right over the retail entrances, which would be right on Chauncey Street. And then obviously the corner, which is the left side of that elevation on Chauncey Street, has two windows grouped, starting from the center of the retail and going over to the left side. The other reason why really that window wasn't put in that elevation is also because of, as you just indicated, the way the rooms were laying out. That area is where the kitchen cabinets would be, and the kitchen areas would be, and the other windows are located where the living spaces would be or where the bedrooms would be. And obviously, we adhere to the minimum code requirements of 12% glazing for all the floor square footages, that those windows would be actually shining into. And we meet that requirement with the new design. And also, in addition, just historically, we're looking at our building as opposed to the old building. And the old building had 21 windows on both Passaic and Chianti Street elevations. And our new building is showing 27. So for those reasons, that's why we came up with the elevation we have come up with. So I hope that helps explain a little bit why it's shown the way it is.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, can I follow up on that? Okay.
Go ahead.
If you're harking back to the old building, then through material on the outside, maybe you should separate the areas to the old building. And when you count the number of windows, the old building was a 3-story building. This is a 4-story building, so you can't really compare apples and oranges there. It's a different number of floors in the building. Thank you.
Commissioner, I agree with you, but again, it wasn't one homogeneous structure. It was multiple structures, so I didn't want to make it exactly perfect as it was one new building. I wanted to have some type of reference to the historic makeup of the site, of what it was, that's all. But I respect your comments.
Yeah, but, okay, so to get back to that, the left side of the building, to the left of the entry doorway, you're referring to it as being 2 buildings as it was historically, but it's drawn as 1 building there. So maybe materials in the front should separate those 2, if that's your reasoning for making the windows the way they are.
Okay. I'm sorry, Commissioner Walter. I'm sorry, Commissioner Walter. This is a question and answer period now. This is not a dialogue period. If you have other questions, please ask them. Otherwise, your comments should be reserved for the discussion period. Thank you.
This is Chair Tate. I just wanted to interject in regarding the awnings there. I just as a question. The awnings appear to be standing seam, and then when you look at the center axis of the entry on a residential level that goes up, I guess it's the staircase. Is that that roof material the same as the awning to kind of bring that material together, or is it a separate material, separate standing seam material?
That's the entrance for the residential. We wanted to make. Are you talking above, way above the entrance, at the top, almost at the roof line?
Yeah, the roof line. That entrance, it appears that the roof of that is represented graphically the same way the awnings are. I'm just curious to know if it's the same exact standing seam material.
That was our intention, yes.
Okay, thank you. And just to kind of footnote what the Commissioner Rich was saying, I think what he was trying to say was that center axis where you created the line of symmetry between the left and right of the entrance, he was wondering if you thought about delineating the 2 masses by a material change on that vertical. So if you look at that sort of bar above that entryway, where you have the hardy planks above, I guess it's the 3 X's. Have you explored the notion of material change? But that's something we can get into at a later date.
We did look at the material change, but again, I wanted to try to be as subtle, with the play on the historical reference as possible. So, we did it, by the fenestration of the windows at this time.
Okay.
But obviously we can discuss, whatever's needed.
Right.
But I think a subtle change is better than a little bit more drastic change. It's
Sure.
not that large of a building, that's one of the other reasons,
Okay, and I'm not entirely clear, but on this Chianti Street where we have that entry, is it recessed back at that corner? If you look at that vertical bar above the entry, is it recessed back in where those windows are in the staircase?
If you look at the floor plan, which is our drawing A2.0, first floor plan, there's a small return just at the residential entrance itself.
Right, okay, I just want to clarify that. Okay, so there is that return. Okay,
There is a small return, yes.
okay, that concludes my questions.
Thank you.
I see no other questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to, I want to take a second to open this up to the public, for questions. And, Secretary, could you provide a call number for the public to call in for, we'll give them a 5-minute period to inquire anything about this particular application?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Those who would like to participate in the public portion may call in at 973-321-1579 and enter meeting ID 711-680-001. Again, those who would like to participate may call in at 973-321-1579 and enter meeting ID 711-680-001.
Thank you, Secretary. The time right now is 7:15. We'll give them a 3-minute period. 7:18 is when we'll close it down. Thank you. Secretary, the time is now 7:18 p.m. I would like to conclude the public portion of this application.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, there are no callers as indicated by our IT department.
Thank you. Tim, can you please read the resolution of statement of purpose for this application, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Resolution number 2024 directs the Executive Director of the Historic Preservation Commission to prepare a memorandum containing the Commission's comments to the Planning Board and/or the Board of Adjustment regarding the property located at 38-40 and 42 Chauncey Street, Paterson, New Jersey, Block 407, Lots 11 and 12, situated within the designated Great Falls Historic District.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have a motion on the floor for this resolution?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
Okay, so Secretary, I heard Commissioner Leon for the motion, and then I heard Commissioner Rafael for the second. Can you confirm?
No, that was Joyce Corvo made the motion.
Oh, pardon me. So that's Joyce Corbo for the motion, and then we have Commissioner Rafael for the second.
Right.
Can we confirm?
Confirmed, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so now I'd like to open up the resolution to the floor for the commissioners to discuss. The resolution is open on the floor. Please raise your hand and the executive director will reach out to you.
Sorry. Mr. Bleeker, can you stop sharing your screen, please? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'm going back to our screen here for our application. Here we go. Okay, commissioners, this is a time for discussion about the application to tell what you brought to the application and create a discussion or comments. It's important that when I memorialize a letter to the planning board about the application that I understand your comments. So please go ahead and tell what you'd like to about the application that we reviewed tonight. Go ahead, Rich Walter.
Yes, okay. Well, I got many comments on this design. First of all, it was stated that the massing is approximately the same. Well, it's a 4-story building, and the largest of the old buildings was a 3-story building, and the buildings next door to it are all about 3-story. So I don't think it fits in mass-wise. Also, I don't like the cadence of the windows. I think that could be improved tremendously. I think that the left and right side of the both sides of the building should be separated to make it look like smaller buildings, not as wide the buildings as they were before. I don't like the air conditioning ducts underneath the windows, and especially since it's not under every window, it makes it look funny when you look across the building. If they have to have we have to have something underneath those windows that don't have the air conditioner to make it look like it does have the air conditioner. There's a better cadence of it. Material-wise, the hardy board is fine. And I guess we'll leave it at that for now. We'll do the rest of the design review.
Commissioner Walter, are there other comments? I don't see anyone with their hand raised.
This is
if you have comments.
This is Chair Tate. So following up on Commissioner Rich's comments, there's a few nuances that we discussed on the 10th during our design review meeting that we will address at a further date regarding the subtle, things on the facade of the structure. But I think as an overall project for this district and that particular block, we landed at it being something that we think is, it's nice for that corner in terms of the development and bringing back life to what was under what happened under siege with that fire. Of course, we'll go back and review all of the checkpoints that Commissioner Rich brought up just now, just to kind of tighten up some of the important nuances, such as the vents below the PTAC units on the various windows on the facade. And from a practical perspective, it's understood that in certain living spaces you'll have the AC versus other spaces you won't. But I think what Rich is sort of hinting at is a uniformity that makes sense for that particular elevation. And as you wrap around the building, there's certain elements to that facade that would need to be reviewed closely, like the lighting fixtures, the awning material, and some of the specifications for the commercial level materiality. But I think at this stage and at this level of resolution that we're putting forth with this public review, it's not in our purview to get into that level of detail yet. So we'll zoom into that at a further date. But from the overall perspective, I think it's a great project. It's good for the neighborhood, and I think the elements make sense. It does respect classical design, and I understand Commissioner Rich's his volumetric question about the additional story and massing. But I think that area will there's some clues that area will eventually densify. It will become a little bit more dense in height and massing over time, and that's the comments that I wanted to bring forth on this. Please let the executive director know if you have any additional statements. Thank you.
Hi, this is Commissioner DeLise. I do have a couple of concerns. Obviously the height of the building, being that it's a 4-story building versus a 3, and their surrounding properties. Overall, this is a great project, but I think also the concern of having 4 floors, that's gonna be a major issue for the other, residents in the area for parking, which I don't see any type of, parking here. And the air conditioners under the window, I really don't care for. So I believe that there's some type of alternative for that. I mean, that's just my opinion.
Thank you, Commissioner DeLise. Executive
Commissioner
Director.
Fell. Commissioner Fell.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So the way I'm looking at this application, and I echo comments by Commissioner Walter and Chair Tate. We met in our design review committee. We brought forth a lot of questions, but most of those questions, and kind of like what I'm encouraging the rest of my commissioners to think about, a lot of them pertain to a design review. In terms of planning, I think it's, we look at the guidelines, we, refer to the guidelines, it's consistent with what's allowed in the district. I think this is a first good proposal for, sort of mixed use with housing and commercial space. And that's, I'm supportive of this project going forward. So that's what I would like to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Rafael. Are there any additional comments or questions for the applicant?
Chair Tate, may I speak?
Yes, please.
I believe the Division of Planning and Zoning application references leasing spaces from the Paterson Parking Authority lot, which is adjacent to the building.
Confirmed. Commissioner DeLise, does that further resolve your question on parking, or are there any additional inquiries regarding this matter?
No, actually, that's great. That's good.
Fantastic.
This is the director. Yes, the parking lot is directly across the street, and this is a great example of how off-site parking that's close by to the project area, really works out for this project. So I'm sure that's where they're looking for parking, and appropriately so. They can focus on having the building occupy the site rather than, parking. And as you know, the historic nature of a lot of our city, but especially in the historic district, is really buildings that are standing shoulder to shoulder with no gaps in between for parking. So this is more consistent, I believe, with that streetscape feeling. Yes, the comments that were made about the bulk of the building in terms of height will be noted to the planning board. This is the kind of comment that the HPC wants to note to the board. However, as the architects pointed out, they're in the zone. They have a maximum height of even taller than this, and this is not the tallest as they're allowed to go. But in context of the previously existing building, as was pointed out based on the photos and previous conditions, this is apparently higher than was there. I don't believe we asked that question to the architects vis-a-vis how the height of this building relates to buildings around it. I know there's a particularly tall set of buildings, kitty corner to this project area, kind of on Chauncey going toward Market. There is a prominent corner building that has a restaurant and I believe some housing above it as well. And that kind of anchors that corner. And this building being opposite from it is a good companion with regard to blockiness and massing. So yes, these are the kind of comments that we can wrap into the recommendations portion for the planning board. We did discuss and we did provide the architects with feedback from the design review committee meeting about the rhythm of the fenestration. The windows, in my opinion, look like they're sliding off the building. There's a wonderful effort here to create some breaking down of scale with the two entrances very cleverly placed on both sides. And that was very much appreciated. However, then the failure of the fenestration to sort of support that breakdown of scale, if you start looking at one of these smaller spaces, the windows are falling all the way to one side or the other of it. And we asked for some improvement to this. This is another comment that would be appropriate to make now with regard to the floor plan on the inside of the building and how it's reviewed by the planning board. Because windows and windows being based on where inside spaces are broken up as opposed to outside symmetry is clearly what's going on in this application. So that would be probably another comment that I heard commissioners making during the application that would need to be stated, and the applicants would have the chance to address that if that comes up at the planning board meeting. There's time between now and then for them to talk about it and address that if they have a way of doing so. Commissioner Raffel, do you have another comment? I see your hand is up.
No, I do not. I'm sorry about that.
Executive Director, this is Chair Tate. I would like to ask the applicant, can you zoom into the proposed south elevation on Passaic Street, please?
Yeah, I have the screen, so I'll do that.
So my question is, if you look on the commercial level of the property, the lower level below the residential, you notice how the PTAC units, the vents actually cut through the water table? Were there any exercises that actually elevated the water table up maybe 8 inches so that it fits within the water table and it doesn't intersect it the way that it does?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, actually, you know what, I think that would be a good change. I will make that change now. Again, it was a function of making sure the window meets all the requirements for light and air, for the unit itself, and in space it actually is going to be, in lighting. But I think that would be a good change. I do see that now, and I didn't realize that before. But I'm going to actually shorten the window and raise that so the grill is above that water table line. Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Executive Director, are there any other questions or hands raised regarding this application?
I see none, Mr. Chair. Any other comments? Anyone else want to weigh in here before we close the discussion period? So just for technical purposes, before you vote on the resolution, your vote on the resolution will indicate that you are in support of this project. So that will be the recommendation to the planning board to recommend that this project be approved with the comments that were made for consideration with regard to height and fenestration primarily, because the materiality is very successful with regard to the materials that are shown here for commitment to our preservation program.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Executive Director. At this time, I'd like to open up the floor for votes with the conditions of revisiting the height and the window placement, and also confirmation of the water table adjustment that we discussed with the location of the PTAC units on the commercial level. Can we confirm that?
Roll call.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Delise,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia Leon,
Yes.
Commissioner Corbo,
Yes.
Commissioner Rafael,
Yes.
Commissioner Walter,
No.
Chair Tate.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bleeker. Mr. Bleeker, we will be in touch with you soon. Executive Director John Frankel will be in touch with you moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your help. Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to move forward to the next item on our agenda under number 7, new business. We'll move to 72 McBride Avenue, Overlook Park, which is in the Great Falls Historic District. This is a plan review of the application for the minor subdivision of Block 4601, Lots 1 and 2. This is comprising the lands of Overlook Park into 4 lots in preparation for the transfer of lands to the United States as part of the Great Falls National Park Historic District. This will be presented by our Executive Director, John Frankel, on behalf of the applicant and the City of Paterson. Executive Director, can you please provide the report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sure. So as the Chairman just mentioned, this is a city project on city-owned lands, and as an agent for the city, I'm going to be making this presentation similar to the way I've done this with you before with Hinchcliffe Stadium in recent times, for example. So I'd like to proceed with this. Again, planning review for an application where the City of Paterson, that owns the lands in this application, is applying to the Paterson Planning Board in order to effectively subdivide these parcels. The parcels that we're looking at are blocks 4601, lots 1 and 2, as they exist. We know them as Overlook Park. This is the same, park footprint that we approved over the past several years ago, and also that we have looked at. It's actually, I believe, about a year ago that we saw our second presentation from the Hamilton Partnership and Quinn Evans partners that are they're designing the visitor center for Overlook Park. So this is the same project area, and the impetus for the subdivision is bifold. So I'm going to start by showing a couple of maps to orient you. This is not the page I'm looking for. Okay, I'll break this down a little bit so we can see it better. So the figure that's on screen is the legislative map that accompanied the legislation to Congress with regard to the boundaries of the proposed Great Falls National Historical Park. And as I'm sure you know, the red boundary that you see is the boundaries of our Great Falls Historic District, and the hatched green area is a subset of the historic district that represents the outline of the park boundaries. And they include many of the common areas and all public land, no private land. And as part of the designation, this was the footprint that was, part of the authorization for the National Park by Congress. This was the footprint that was provided. Further on, in 2011, a couple years after authorization, City of Paterson and the National Park Service continued to negotiate about what the new park might look like, and specifically for this application, the footprint of lands that the Park Service might like to acquire by donation, which is provided for in the legislation. So I'm just showing you some figures that go along with the agreement that the city and the Park Service eventually signed in November of 2011, and these were figures that were attached for the purpose of demonstrating the various parcels and which tracks would be pursued for transfer to the Park Service and which would not. So on this page that I'm showing, you'll see I'll blow it up just a little bit so you can see the color a little better. These darker areas of green shading, one of them which is Overlook Park, and this other sort of peninsula that juts out to where the waterfall is at the intersection of McBride and Spruce. The darker shaded parcels are proposed for acquisition by the Park Service under Phase 1. You can see it talks about here in the legend, the darker shaded green is proposed for the core area of transfer to the Park Service. So this is sort of what we are been working on since then with regard to knowing about the transfer. So the visitor center project came later or after. It was not in anyone's mind at this time, but the visitor center kind of had a lot of moving parts and handles that do require the land to be owned by the United States prior to the construction of the visitor center. So this is a very timely application at this point, and we've been able to get it to a point where the planning board application has been submitted, which has triggered this review. So I want to give you some background as to why we're looking at this. The application we're looking at is not the transfer part of the sort of project, but it's actually the precursor to the eventual transfer, which includes the deed and so forth that will be presented to the council in the forthcoming months. So for now, we're going to focus on Overlook Park. The other area that we know as Mary Ellen Kramer Park is not included in the operation and transfer that we're doing right now. This will be a subsequent move, so we'll be working on the transfer of lots, the parcel 01103, 01104 at a different time in the future. So we're concentrating right now on the Overlook Park parcels. I'm going to go to another figure for you. This is the survey that's provided for the subdivision application. I'd like to illustrate the two lots proposed to be subdivided into 4 and the purpose behind it. I'd like to point out that all of the small writing on the left side of the plan is the legal descriptions of the 4 new lots, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a legend here, And then there's a standard zoning table that goes on, every planning board application as a mandatory part that talks about the proposed, if anything is proposed being built. I want to point out that as a subdivision application, when the application is completed, the city will still own the lands, and there are no proposed changes to these lands along with the application, meaning we're not building any new buildings, we're not talking about bulk inside yard setbacks and so forth, because it's just a subdivision to change the lot lines. We have other tables here. One of them concerns the footbridges. Everyone knows we have several footbridges in the project area, and they're delineated and sort of noted here in this table. And then the next table is a 5 points on the plan for historic markers and the statue of Alexander Hamilton as well. I'll get into that in just a moment. So that's how I would orient you to this plan. I'm going to go ahead and blow this up so we can see it more directly in the subdivided area, so I can show you what I need to demonstrate. So lots, currently this is divided under lots 1 and 2, and the majority of lot 1 concerns the peninsula. I'm moving my hand around the 2 footbridges that we're familiar with. One is the footbridge that everyone crosses to go over the chasm, and the other is the historic bridge that carries the water pipeline. There's of course, a walkway that heads to the intersection of McBride Avenue Extension and then the Wayne Avenue Bridge and McBride Avenue. And then, of course, lot number 2 is the bulk of Overlook Park, which is over on this side. And I want to point out this note right here that says lot line to be removed. I'm running my hand over the current lot line that separates lots 1 and 2. And so you kind of get a sense of what the current situation is, lots 1 and 2. This is the line that divides them. So in the application, this lot line would be removed, and the lot number 2 will retain its name as lot number 2, and the new lot line will come here where this heavy dashed line is. The heavy dashed line runs pretty close to the sheer cliff of the retaining wall, and then it runs across the front of the hydroelectric plant and includes the fenced area that the access road leads to. So this dashed line becomes the new boundary of lot number 2, and all of Overlook Park, lot number 2, will eventually be transferred to the United States. The city will reserve appropriate easements on this lot so that the hydroelectric plant can continue to be operated by the city of Paterson, and the tenants to the hydroelectric plant will be able to access the plant through the asphalt roadway. And there are other easements that are delineated on page 2 of this plan for maintenance and other responsibilities that the plant will need for operations and the city will need for maintaining adjacent lands. And one of the adjacent lands is the Quarry 1, which will remain in ownership of the city of Paterson. It's not slotted for transfer at a future date. What's also germane to lot number 2 that I would like to point out is the presence of City of Paterson cultural properties that include site markers and monuments that kind of commemoratively name the park as Overlook Park or Larry B. Haynes Park. Some of these markers go back to the late 1960s, and we have the Harshbarger Rose Garden plaque that was placed by the MUA at a later date. And we have, of course, the statue of Alexander Hamilton that was situated in front of City Hall and was commissioned by the city of Paterson in 1904. The statue was moved to the Federal Plaza, like Triangle Park or Pocket Park in front of the post office on Market Street for a time, before it was moved to Great Falls, where it's been, since then, pretty much like the mid-60s, I believe is when that move happened. So, part of the transfer will be to reserve these movable objects. These are really more of objects on the land as opposed to what are called improvements on the land. Improvements include the building and the walkways and a parking lot. These are called improvements. And these other smaller are called objects, and they are movable. They can be removed from the landscape. These will be reserved as property of the city of Paterson as cultural property, and that includes the statue as well. That will be provided for in the deed, and the appropriate language will be exchanged with regard to the time when the land is transferred in the future. So that was another germane topic I wanted to point out to you. Moving on to the other parcels, I'd like to demonstrate on center screen now. We have the other 3 parcels to be created. So first of all, the majority of what you're looking at was called lot number 1. Now we have the heavy dashed lines here where my hand is moving, and then here where my hand is moving. And you can kind of visualize now the area within this heavy dashed line. And I'm circling it now with my hand cursor, and it's right in the center. It says proposed block 4601 lot 1. So lot 1 will be changed, or rather reduced, to just this area. This area incorporates the 1-story brick building we know as the gatehouse on the upper plaza. That's a historic portion of the hydroelectric plant. Down below, here where my hand is the hydroelectric plant. The area adjacent to it is the access, or the yard, let's call that the yard of the hydroelectric plant. And then we have the operational spaces, for example, the big parking area where the crane parks to empty the forebay of debris, and we have the actual forebay itself, and the penstock loading area and platforming, and we have a small oil house here. The hard dashed line is generally where the fence line sits today, separating the public space from the operational space of the hydroelectric plant. So the overall point here is that the new lot 1 will be all the operational spaces and the buildings of the hydroelectric plant, which will be continued to be in the ownership of the city of Paterson in perpetuity. So this lot 1 would not be transferred to the National Park Service, and the city would continue to operate the hydroelectric plant through its lease agreement with the tenant currently that is Eagle Creek Renewable Energy. That leaves us with 2 other lots, the lands that are left over from the current lot 1. Down here at the bottom, I call this the pork chop lot. It looks sort of like a cut of meat or a pork chop. This is a proposed lot, block 4601, lot 1.01. This is just the corner right along the river and the sidewalk and the walking path for pedestrians that gets people kind of to the footbridge over the forebay. Okay, and you can see that this lot and lot 1.02, the rest of the peninsula, would be segregated from lot 1. So we have lot 1.02, lot 1.01. These are the 2 new lots being created, and these are for transfer to the National Park Service with appropriate easements for all of the water pipelines underneath, and also the need to access the shoreline for maintenance of hydroelectric monitoring equipment of the flow of the Passaic River, etc. So we have a footbridge that connects these 2. We have water underneath the footbridge, and the 2 lots and lot number 2 here would be for transfer to the National Park Service. So we have 2 lots being divided into 4, one of which will remain with the city, the other 3 eventually to be transferred to the Park Service. that is the substance of this application. Again, no improvements are with this application, just the redrawing of these lot lines and the establishment of the various necessary easements. Another figure I want to show you is the letter of intent and impact. This is a document that was circulated in your pre-meeting packet. This is a standard document that goes to with planning board application that pretty much describes in writing, reduces to writing what I just mentioned to you and demonstrated visually on the map. So it talks about the agreement and the transfer and anticipation of transfer to the United States at a later date, and the subdivision of 2 lots into 4, etc. So I wanted to show and demonstrate the letter of intent. Again, it was part of your packet. We don't need to go through and read it, but it's here for the benefit of those watching, and it breaks down in writing what I just demonstrated visually. As you know, for a planning review, it's triggered by our a submission of a planning board application, which we have, and now we've gotten to a point of the planning review, similar to, sorry, I'm missing I guess it's this one, yes, which is where we are now. So that concludes my presentation. I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Executive Director, for your very detailed description of the of those acquisitions. Commissioners, at this time, I'd like to open the floor for questions on what was just presented. If there are any questions, please feel free to raise your hand, and the Executive Director will address you accordingly. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Walter?
Yeah, John Flecker, I'm just curious on this point, but so it really is something for the future. But when the land is transferred to the Park Service, will the commissioner still have the design review over any changes that they do in that land?
No. Once the land becomes the property of the United States, they have no other local authority to answer back to with regard to development, planning, buildings. They don't need to answer to local jurisdictions about what they plan, what they build, etc. With that said, administratively speaking, the environmental laws of the state of New Jersey would still apply, and the United States would still maintain consistency with the current environmental permit that is over the park. When the improvements were made to the park, we also did remediation because all these lands are considered brownfields, and we have engineering controls, and we have a site-wide cap on Overlook Park, as mandated by the DEP laws and guidelines. And that permit is something that goes on in perpetuity, that kind of goes with the land through what's called a deed notice. And so that is something that remains in place, and that the United States would have to continue to be responsible to, maintaining those obligations. But other than that, the other local jurisdictions don't apply.
Just to follow up on that question, since the jurisdiction is shifted from the local jurisdiction overview, would that transfer over would those lands that go to the Park Service transfer over to SHPO? And would we obviously would no longer do the 106 reviews, but would SHPO have purview over, if there was some intervention that was introduced that was sort of out of scale with our trajectory? Would they be the agency that would do all the reviews at this point?
That's a great question, and it's got an interesting answer too. For now, these lands are city-owned, and we've been through a design process and construction process for the park on Overlook Park. You're all familiar with that. This required the city, as city-owned property, to go through a mandatory SHPO review, which is required by state law the city has to comply with in order to review these projects and make sure they're consistent with preservation practice. The state oversees our work on city property when the properties are listed on the New Jersey Register. When properties are listed on the National Register, which is property also is, there's a mandatory federal compliance process called Section 106 that you just mentioned. So what we did over the park, for example, or even Quarry Lawn, we're touching base with a Section 106 process that the National Park Service is heading up and leading off. The city, through my office, is going through a state SHPO compliance process for the state side, and we're running those two things sort of concurrently about at the same time when we do this. But this is because the lands are owned by the city. When the lands are not owned by the city, then there is no further obligation for the government, the United States, to comply with those mandates. It now has Section 106 review, and that's the federal law that triggers all the different inputs to what they're proposing to build. So whatever they propose to do on the lands, although they don't need to seek local approvals, they do need to run a Section 106 process, and we will be consulting parties to that. The SHPO, I think, also would be involved. I'm not entirely clear to what formality they are. I don't believe they have the same formality of jurisdiction over federal lands as they do right now as city property, because that process would not apply the same way. But I do believe there would be continued discussion if the SHPO wanted to provide ongoing input, and the Park Service would seek their input. But I don't think it's a formality. I think the Park Service is obligated to follow federal law at that point when it comes to preservation review. So that's a complicated way of explaining that, sort of the same thing. Once it goes into their ownership, they're to be guided by the federal preservation laws. I can tell you that one of the processes that we have to go through is showing the SHPO our draft deed of transfer. They want to make sure that there's elements in the deed that will bind the Park Service to continuing the preservation stewardship on the lands that are consistent with the way the status quo now. In one way, it's funny because the National Park Service is the government's cultural stewardship organization, so to speak, and that is really their primary mission. So there would be no reason to expect them to deviate from their stewardship mission. But the SHPO is going to look into that deed and make comments to make sure that the deed sort of is binding them to continue the same level of stewardship that that we have now over the land. So that's another little interesting portion, and we're required to do that again because we're the owners of the property, being we're a municipality and we're under the state law that mandates this level of review.
Confirmed. It's good to know that we have that shadow existence, that shadow review over the purview of that acquisition. Thank you.
Yes. Are there any other questions? I don't see any other questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Executive Director. At this time, I'd like to move back on our agenda to number 3, which is the approval of minutes.
I'm sorry, I need to interrupt you. We do need to take a vote on this resolution the same way as we do for a planning application, so that we can, get a letter written to the planning board.
Confirmed. Secretary, can you provide a statement of resolution for this application, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Resolution number 2025 directs the Executive Director of the Historic Preservation Commission to prepare a memorandum containing the Commission's recommendations to the Planning Board and/or the Board of Adjustment regarding the property located at 76-108 McBride Avenue, Paterson, New Jersey, Block 4601, Lots 1 and 2, situated within the designated Great Falls Historic District.
Confirmed. With that being said, can we get a motion and second on the floor?
So moved.
Make a motion.
Okay, so I heard, Vice Chair Rafael, and I believe that was, Commissioner Maribel Leon, or was that? Yes, Secretary, did you get that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair Rafael and Commissioner Corbo, correct?
Yes.
No,
With Maribel.
Commissioner Garcia Leon. Second.
I will correct that, thank you. Roll call, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please.
Commissioner DeLees,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia Leon,
Yes.
Commissioner Corbo,
Yes.
Commissioner Rafael,
Yes.
Commissioner Walter,
Yes.
Chair Tate.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Fantastic. So at this point, we'll move forward to, number 3 on our agenda, which is the approval of minutes for January 25th, 2021. Do you have any notes on that, Executive Director?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we did not provide a draft of the minutes for January 25th, and we asked the Commission's consideration to move approval of these minutes to the next upcoming HPC meeting.
Confirmed.
Commissioner Walter, make that a motion?
Second.
So I heard Commissioner Walter with the motion, and I heard Commissioner or Vice Chair Rafael with the second.
Confirmed, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner DeLees,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia Leon,
Yes.
Commissioner Corbo,
Yes.
Commissioner Rafael, or Vice Chair Rafael, excuse me,
Yes.
Chair Walter, or
Yes.
Commissioner Walter, and
Yes.
Chair Tate.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Excellent. We will move down to number 4 on our agenda, which is administrative matters. We'll start with the COVID-19 state of emergency protocols, and then B, we'll do the zoning violation referrals and updates. Executive Director, can you go through those 2 points, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Insofar as item A, COVID-19 state of emergency protocols, we continue to operate under emergency protocols set forth by the state of emergency in place, consistent with Governor Murphy's directives. The last month we're providing this update every month, and as announced last month, the city workforce was put back on full staffing. Our staff is reporting full-time business hours as usual, in observation of the personal protective protocols that we're all familiar with, and that situation continues this month and for the foreseeable future. So the update is pretty much status quo from last time. As far as item B, zoning violations, I would ask our Historic Preservation Specialist, Tim Henderson, to provide the update. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Commissioners, the Director and I continue to pursue violations referrals with a number of properties, some of which were referred by Commissioners. I have gotten some personal emails from Commissioners asking for updates on these violations, and what I would like to say is that currently there are multiple summonses pending against properties that are in violation both in the downtown and in the East Side Historic District. One disruption in the process that Gianfranco and I have now been apprised of is that because municipal court is video court right now, judges are not issuing or are issuing bench warrants in a different way. So people in violation that are summoned by the court are less compelled to attend court. And right now we have several properties where they are just declining to communicate with the court. And right now we are working with the zoning officer to figure out a way to pursue those violations. We also have a property in the east side that has a summons pending, but we've also received concerns that the property is for sale. And I just want to assure the commissioners that the violations are noted, that the summons is in process, and that the director and I are pursuing it to the best of our ability.
Also, I would like to add, in reference to an application that we heard at the commission as much as 2 to 3 months ago in the Eastside Park District, the applicant, the owner, has exercised her right to appeal, which by ordinance goes to the Board of Adjustment. And wanted to let you know that put the request into the administration to provide outside representation for the president for the HPC, which is necessary when we go in front of other boards with business. And recently have been assigned outside counsel for that purpose. And we're now going to be able to work together with the applicant's attorney and the Board of Adjustment attorney to set up a date for the appeal to be adjudicated at the Board of Adjustment. So I want to let you know that news as well. That's now going to start, I guess, slowly moving forward. And just like you may already know this, but in general, the applications for the Board of Adjustment and the Planning Board are very much in arrears. The COVID protocol over the past year has really slowed things down. The same goes with courts. Court processes have been slowed down, as Tim just mentioned, with regard to our enforcement endeavors. So we have to be patient with regard to scheduling, and the applicants are also, bearing the burden of having to wait for their applications to be heard. It's just on a different time schedule, like so many things now, due to the state of emergency. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes our reports on administrative matters, unless there are any questions from the commissioners.
If there are no questions, we'll move forward, but I do want to say thank you, John Franco, and thank you, Tim, for providing those two reports. If there's no hands, I'll move forward to the next item on our agenda.
No hands here.
Thank you. So we'll move forward to number 5, which is committee reports. Are there any reports to update the HPC with?
Seeing none.
Thank you. We'll move forward to old business and correspondence. We'll start with item A, municipal historic landmark designations. Sub-item 1, 90-98 Pearl Street, Church of Holy Communion. And then, if you will, Executive Director, please proceed down the list. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As for 6A, there are 2 designations that we've been talking about over the past year now. The report we gave last time about Holy Communion was that the sale was consummated in December, and during January we sent several communications to the new owners asking for possibility of meeting with them, offering assistance, seeing that they would be getting settled in. Given that the weather has been kind of cold and heavy with snow, not so sure that much is going on over there, but we continue our efforts to get in touch with them. And eventually, once we make our contact, we'd like to talk with them about this ongoing designation. I've not heard back from them despite our communications, and I believe that we're going to need to do more reaching out and phone calling to hopefully just have someone pick up the phone at this point. We've sent formal communications, and we haven't gotten responses. So I think it's time to start calling in, and hopefully we can just start speaking to someone. And if we're not successful with that, well, we can always send written communication about the designation, but we're not quite at that point yet. As far as Toto Avenue, the niche mill, Toto Avenue works, the planning board is aware of our queries. Now we made 2 queries to be scheduled for a meeting with them to carry forward designation efforts. In the meanwhile, there has been a planning application forwarded by a potential developer that's in contract with the owner for the property. The current application is to reuse the building as mini storage And the application now has been gone into a part of the process having to do with completeness. So Mr. Deutsch has sent a letter to the applicant saying, you know, you need to submit the following materials. They're still missing from your application. And one of them that he asked them to do with his letter was to meet with us and to gather our compliance with the application. And they have reached out to request a meeting with us for that purpose. Meanwhile, there's also been additional discussion with the applicant about changing the application from mini storage to mixed use, which is more consistent with the redevelopment plan that's in place for the area. And we have good reason to think that we're getting closer and closer to that outcome. So, you know, the application will, you know, maybe withdrawn or changed or what have you with a different use, which would be very desirable and will really change the course of the designation and the outcomes. The building, as you all know, is already inventoried at the state of New Jersey level and has a letter of eligibility through the 30 mil survey that was completed several years ago, which gives that property an entree to an eligibility for the National Historic Preservation Tax Credit Program, which I believe the applicant is pursuing. So that is really good news. I want to provide that news to all of you. With regard to the designation, we ultimately will get a preservation review, which is appropriate, either with or without completing the designation based on the nature of the ongoing planning application and the interest of someone to rehab the building. And also the planning board's efforts to make sure that they're meeting with us prior to the application getting to the floor of the planning board. So that's an update on the Toto Avenue works that's been a work in progress for several months now. And I'm feeling very optimistic about it. As for 6B, in terms of director's reports, I would like to address the Great Falls National Park projects. This goes back to ATP site fence and also the quarry lawn projects, and we are continuing to hone in closer on aggregating the additional grant funding that is coming more and more online for the quarry lawn project. This is an application for site remediation and so forth that we had anticipated. We're starting to get the responses, and the award letters are coming through. We're in review of the construction documents now. We're several months away from, we have a DEP permit that's ongoing. We have a SHPO review that's ongoing for the area of over the park that needs ADA access that we all looked at not too long ago. So this project is really tuning up and getting close to bidding in the next several months. Looking forward to maybe the late spring of having this project ready for bidding. That seems to still be the target for quarry lawn. The ATP site fence, we had some issues with finishing the area near the street, and the snow has really demobilized the project. We needed to kind of change our approach to the final installation of gates and fence line that goes at that corner intersection of McBride and Mill, and I have indication from the EPA that they should be remobilizing to complete that work in the next week or two, and that should be done. There's only about a week of work left to do on that project for it to be done. Working with the mayor's office on a public information presentation about the site fence and the next plans for quarry lawn and other ATP site plans, which now will, once the fence is installed, will start moving toward the decommissioning of several very large underground storage tanks that still have heating fuel in them that are right near the coal gun mill. That's also, a grant that we applied for and has been awarded recently. That'll go along with the that'll go in parallel with the Quarry Lawn project. So those are some of the items that I will be discussing at a future public meeting. I'll let you know when that meeting's happening by email once it's set up by the mayor's office. Newcastle Memorial Park, you know that we have a contractor. We're now in the process of getting our first permit. We can't really do anything on the ground until we have the Soil Conservation District permit that's being reviewed. There's also a lot of snow on the ground right now, so I know the contractor does want to get started with installation of a fence and so forth, but we're waiting on the permit, and so that one you haven't seen any activity over there yet, but at any time now it should start. Then we also have the transfer items that we just went over in the presentation for the Overlook Park area. And we're working internally, and as we always do with the Park Service, on our kind of next projects that are going to concern the raceway. So that's also some news to stay tuned with. We are talking about funding sources and applications for raceway funding. That will be something that we hope to get to later this year to get started with planning. Meanwhile, there is an award of a grant for a planning exercise for the ATP site, which I look very, very much forward to getting started with. And also Vista Park, which is just outside of the Great Falls District. Those are two projects that need to get off the ground in the next several months, if all possible. So that concludes my presentation about the Great Falls projects. And I know that Tim and I have met with owners in the downtown district for several, large, high key contributing building, high architectural style buildings in the downtown commercial district that are very exciting. The owners have approached us about mixed-use rehab, reuse as housing upstairs and, of course, commercial downstairs. This is adding even more to the ongoing portfolio and growth of the downtown commercial district for occupancy of vacant upper floors in mixed use. So we're very excited about these new applications that we're looking forward to receiving soon. So the Eastside Park Historic District projects, we have, as you know, approved a new construction recently, and I know that the owners, consistent with our resolution, have continued to be in touch with us on a very intense basis because they are in construction, and they talked with us about windows and doors and materiality and all the different things that were left to our charge in the approval. So that is moving ahead. I haven't been up to the site to see the amount of completion that they have, but I do know they've been calling us quite a lot. So I wanted to just give you an update on that as well. I'll just like to ask Tim Henderson if there's any other project areas in the Eastside Park District that you want to give a report on, or should we leave it at new construction?
Thank you, Gianfranco. I would just like to add that if the commission can remember the project from it took carried from fall 2019 into winter 2020, it was the comprehensive rehabilitation of 303-311 East 37th Street. It was the property of a former member of the commission. It was the previous owner, actually. We are now undertaking a similar rehabilitation of a property on East 36th Street, 387-389, and I will continue to share updates with that project as it unfolds with the commission. We have received a design review application, but Gianfranco and I have referred it back to the applicant for revisions and more intensive specifications that we will share with the commission before approvals are released. Thank you, Gianfranco.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes the items A and B under agenda item 6. Are there any questions from the commissioners?
Thank you, Executive Director. Thank you, Secretary. If there are any questions, please raise your hands.
I don't see any.
Thank you very much. At this point, we'll move on to item number 8, which is public portion. Can we get a motion to open up the public portion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, so we have Vice Chair Rafael, and then we have Commissioner Corbo, who did the second. Can we get that confirmed on record?
Confirmed, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Delis,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia Leon,
Yes.
Commissioner Corbo,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rafael,
Yes.
Commissioner Walter,
Yes.
Chair Tate.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Secretary, can you please provide the public with the caller number? We'll give them 5 minutes.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Those who would like to participate in the public portion may call in at 973-321-1579 and enter meeting ID 711-680-001. Again, those who would like to participate in the public portion may call in at 973-321-1579 and enter meeting ID 711-680-001.
Thank you. The time right now is 8:25 p.m. and the call lines will close at 8:30 p.m. Thank you. Executive Director, the time is now 8:30 p.m. Can you confirm if there are any calls from IT?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I just heard from IT, there are no callers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Secretary, can we get a motion to close in a second?
Motion to close.
Second.
Mr. Chairman, am I correct that it was moved by Vice Chair Rafael and seconded by Commissioner Garcia-Leon?
That is correct. Can we get a roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner DeLees,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia-Leon,
Yes.
Commissioner Corbo,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rafael,
Yes.
Commissioner Walter,
Yes.
Chair Tate.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Before we close this meeting, I just want to state, I want to thank each and every one of you for your just continued support and energy for our city and all the things that we're doing to preserve, the great city of Paterson. I want to give a special thanks to the administration, John Franco and Timothy Henderson for your continued energy on the logistics of a lot of this. And, we got to keep going. So just wanted to add that in. Thank you very much. Can we get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Okay, so I heard Commissioner Leon for the motion, and who do we have for the second?
Commissioner DeLees.
We have Commissioner DeLees for the second. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner DeLees,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia-Leon,
Yes.
Commissioner Corbo,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rafael,
Yes.
Commissioner Walter,
Yes, and good night all.
Chair Tate.
Yes, thank you, everyone. And are we confirmed?
Yes, motion carries, Mr. Chairman.
I call this meeting adjourned at 8:32, and I want to thank you all and have a great evening.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.